We're in the midst of a huge transformation where peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I'm very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Brandi Riggins. She is the Global Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Guidewire Software. Brandi, it's so good to have you on the show. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Sure. So thank you for having me so much to be here. My pronouns that are preferred are she, her, hers. And so happy that you even opened up with that because that's just starting off with inclusivity from the very beginning, and it sets the tone for the conversation. So me, you'll sort of see this come through when we have the conversation today. I am a natural talker. I am a natural communicator. I wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. That or either a reporter because I talked a lot. So I wanted to be able to influence the best and brightest with my voice and just teaching up the next generation. That's what I wanted to do. I used to teach Barbie dolls.
I love that. I also had like a file effects folder of lots of work I wanted to teach as well. Fast forward to today, I would love to know amongst the many projects I'm sure you're working on, can you share what's one of the current problems you're trying to solve?
One of the current problems that I'm trying to solve is really creating an inclusive culture for those of us who are in a remote environment. And it's interesting because you and I are both at home right now. And that is actually a real thing as far as developing connections when you're in the space in which you can't go into an office. I actually sit in North Carolina on the Eastern Shore of the United States. I have a team that's geographically dispersed, with the furthest person being in Kuala Lumpur. I have someone that I interact frequently with, my counterpart who's in Dublin, Ireland. And then the majority of my team is in San Mateo, California, with a couple of us on the East Coast. Out of the people that I named, we all started the company that I'm in, which right now, which is Guidewire Software, within the last year or two. Some of us have never been into an actual office before. That is a really big challenge when you're trying to figure out the culture of a company. We have over 900 people that started within the COVID cohort, is what we're calling it. Wow. And so it's trying to help those people acclimate into a culture for something that they've never been in. So we're creating a culture handbook so people can sort of feel the culture at their fingertips. And our newer employees will have like a guide to sort of take them along the journey as they become guardians of Guidewire, as we like to say.
Guardians of Guidewire. I love that. That's a lot of growth, especially in the past few years as well. And it's in the name of our interview series. And I want to ask how you think about measuring this dynamic thing of company culture, both in a qualitative and quantitative way, especially when folks are in different geographies as well.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you asked this question because this is also something else that I'm working on. And I wanted to sort of talk about both the quantitative and the quantitative piece. So from a numbers perspective, from data, from what do the metrics show? We just actually finished our survey with Pecan, an employee engagement survey provider. Love the tool because we surveyed on health and wellness, because mental health is really big at Guidewire. We surveyed on employee engagement as well as DEI. So looking at those things actually gives us a pulse of where people are. Managers can actually respond real time to employees. The employees can sort of see how their peers feel about the organization, and at the same time sort of see how the organization is faring. What's next is we're going to go out and communicate, hey, here's what we're doing about what you actually said. Now, here's the things that you can't touch, and this is not about the numbers, this is the things that you can't see. I always tell people, I don't like to get caught up into, sometimes we can be data reliant. Let me explain that. One of the things, everybody has their pet peeve. My pet peeve is that I always say behind every number is a person. Behind every graph is somebody who has a story. So the numbers may tell me one thing, the graphs may tell me another. Even from a trend line, I can see, how people are faring from an attrition perspective and how they feel about the organization. But it's not until we have these conversations that we're doing right now that I'm actually able to sort of talk to you and see how you feel. And so then we do things that are fun. Sometimes you can't put a price on fun. You can't put a metric on fun. How do you measure? We just had a virtual Harry Potter event and we all got sorted into houses. and 150 people came, to me, that was a success, right? But if you asked me, well, how do you know this event was successful versus another event? I could say to you, Christina, we could look at the results of the Net Promoter Score after the event. But if I didn't have that, we're truly going off of employee sentiment. And so I will say I look at both of those things. I look at the live comments of what people say. I look at the feedback of the events, what they send me after they attend things. I love getting emails and communication from our employees. So I do believe that both those things have to coexist in order to have really great initiatives. I think they're both equal and they're both needed. But that's sort of how I look at both of them in any initiative that I'm doing.
Absolutely. You want to be kind of insights driven and look at that data, but you don't want to be relying on it, as you were talking
Yeah.
about data drive you. And there is always a person in a story. I love that behind kind of the graphs and the data you see at large as well. Every person in every organization is at a different part of their diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. Can you tell me about where you see Guidewire Software is today in that equity journey or process?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I can say, and I've actually been doing this work for quite some time. And if you all go out and look at me on LinkedIn and look at my bio, you'll see that. And so I've worked at really large organizations. I've worked at mid-sized organizations, and everybody has been very different in their journey. The thing that makes Guidewire unique is that the function is new, the role that I'm in is new, but the work is not. And so I say all that to say that before I got here, they were already in process. They had already established a DEI core team, which is basically groups of individuals that sit within the people team or within the business that are really focused and honed in on our diversity work with talent, with learning, with engagement. And they had also stood up the ERGs. We actually launched them on the third day that I had arrived. So of course it sounds great that I launched them, but I didn't. So I always like to say, why do you all need me? Because you did all the hard stuff first. You know, you actually were doing the work. So they were doing the work. They were having the seminars. They were doing the training. I see myself as really as a conductor to sort of shepherd the word, to make sure that it has a global lens of inclusivity, to make sure that we're hitting the diversity dimensions that we normally don't talk about other than race and women. I am a military spouse. I didn't say that, but I'm a proud Air Force veteran spouse. I also have a son that's neurodiverse. So things like that are really important to me. I am one of the very few people located on the East Coast because we're a West Coast technology company with a second global office in Dublin. And so my role is sort of to make sure that no matter where you sit, I sort of shepherd all these things together, that you have the same experience throughout Guidewire. So we're inaugural in the function, but not the work, because even before I got here, they were already actually doing the work. So that makes it a little bit easier. The employees that accepted me, much easier. Everybody was very collegial in how I got here. And it's just very different because when I think about people who are at the start of their DEI journey, and I've been in other places and other companies where companies are at the start, it's very different than Guidewire because, you know, they were already doing the work. So I hope I answered the question. But I guess I would say, I hope I answered the question to sort of give you a glimpse of where we actually were.
Absolutely. I think that is really helpful context to understand. I personally love employee resource groups as well. I think it's so important for community as a former ERG leader as well. And you were talking about this earlier when we were, discussing company culture and how you know if people feel like they are part of it across different locations as well. Oftentimes, we have a lot of leaders and organizations leaning into diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is great, but they want to know, are we doing a good job? Are we measuring towards these quote unquote goals? What is your philosophy about measuring these strategies, knowing that we don't want to check a box, but what gets measured gets invested in?
So I'm actually at this stage now, and I want to sort of talk about growth that I've even had in the role, because I will be honest with you, Christina, all of the things are not good in a sense of even me saying, okay, this is going to work. Sometimes things are like trial and error for me. And so when I came in, we looked at the goals and we said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to aspire to be this way. We had all these great gold dreams. Gold is in like a trophy gold. Gold is in like this nice little candlestick. And then COVID came, and then we got punched in the face with the 1-2. Then Omicron came, and we got kicked in the shins with the 1-2. And all these things sort of changed. So all these initiatives that we put out, we weren't able to do because, our cultural climate, our environmental climate, our political climate, even Ukraine sort of put a pause or a shift and pivot in things that we were going to do. So here's what we're really focused on right now. We are really focused on having a strong foundation of DEI knowledge, DEI training, especially at the leadership level, as well as the employee level. We're going to actually meet in the middle. We're going to go top down and we're going to go bottom up at the same time. And then we're readjusting our goals to do more of a 3-year pivot and a 5-year pivot. This does a couple of things. It takes the angst off of the ERG leaders and the diversity council leaders and feeling like they didn't do as much as they could have because, although they tried, they didn't necessarily fare well just because of different things going on in the environment. And it gives us time to build up our DEI competency over a good amount of time. I always tell people DEI is not a sprint. It's a journey. Where are you at in those mile-long markers? What do your checkpoints actually look like? One of the things that I can say from an overall enterprise standpoint that we are doing from a measurement is we did make this, meaning DEI work, part of the overall company goals, and it does affect, I don't want to say affect, but it does have influence on our company bonus rating. One of the things I love about this is that typically when we see things like this, it's normally at the executive leadership level, but we actually made it for all of our employees because everybody should be vested into the work of DEI culture. So that's sort of how I feel about the goals. I do not want to incent bad behavior. I do not want this to be a check the box function. I want this to be a learning and I understand function. I want this to be so well embedded that 2 years down the line, Guidewire says, okay, do we still need Brandi? Which of course they probably won't, but I want to work myself out of a job. That's what all of us eventually want to be able to do.
Absolutely. DEI should be at the DNA of any organization, whether Brandi's in the room or not. They'd be thinking about the process. And again, being a guide as well for folks as well, and just providing that feedback too, and really creating the space. And I think being closely aligned to company goals is also really important too at an executive level. We know that, you mentioned a lot of different things that have been going on these past few years, and people are stressed. One study found that 47% of employees reported their stress was higher than anything they'd ever experienced in their career, and only 37% agreed their organization really understood what they needed, both in their personal lives and for their families. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you're showing up for the full lives of employees?
How I'm showing up for the full lives of employees?
Yeah.
Me personally, or just Guidewire in general?
It could be either.
Okay, so I'm going to relate this. I think I know what you're asking me, but I'm going to relate. What I'm going to tell you is how I'm managing my work-life balance with the demands of my job in this COVID changing environment. Is that what you're?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So a cool fun fact about me is I started this role on the ending my maternity leave. Guidewire waited on me. I interviewed for this job while on maternity leave, and I told them that there's a couple of things that I won't compromise, and one of them is my family. And I'm not able to start because I want to take the full advantage of the time that I have, because you were probably the same way. I've been working since I was 17 years old. And this is the only time that I can have, and I really want to spend it with my baby. I am a mom over 40, just to be completely transparent. And so for those of you on the line, it's okay. I like to put that out there and be a little bit transparent about that, because I know that there's someone else on the line like me. And so with that being said, I have really big parameters around my family and my work-life balance with my child. There are times where Braxton will be in a meeting with me with a little banner on his little high chair that says Guidewire's youngest executive. There have been many times where I've taken calls and Zooms and he's right in my lap looking at the Zoom, but because he was born in COVID, he actually is a Zoom baby. He prefers looking at faces versus the television. He gets a kick out of this. I know it's sort of eerie, but he does. Every day I block my calendar so that I can lay him down, feed him, put him to bed. I come back to work because that's what I choose to do when he's asleep. And then I can work my emails with my global counterparts, because I want to make sure that they get the attention that they desire. But I'm able to do that because I follow the parameters that I set for myself. And then two, I communicate with my job to say, here's what I have going on. I have a doctor's appointment today. I have this for my children today. I actually have a child going to college in 22 days. That's another thing that I have going on. And I also encourage my team members, the people who actually work for me, to sort of have that same type of boundary philosophy so that they can manage their time appropriately. Now, what that does mean is that when I am on, which I'm on right now, that I show up and I give my best. I get my rest so that I'm able to do that. But I manage my calendar, I write everything down. I have in my own internal compass of I got to meet my own goals, and then that allows me to have better work-life balance because I'm like, I got to get it in, I got to work so that I can spend time with my family.
I love that. Thank you for sharing your experience and how you also protect your time and come energized to work and really kind of block out that space as well based on your values and really model that behavior for your team as well and encourage them to do so too. I think we've all audited kind of the role that work has played in our lives and also just the employee experience in general, especially for leaders, to make sure it's personalized at scale to the team. There's flexibility involved. Can you tell me how you've redesigned a system, whether it's a process, policy, or initiative, to be more equitable or change it around these past few years as well?
Sure. So one of them, I'm going to sort of speak because we just actually did this. And I'm going to try to speak very carefully about it because we're still working out some of the things with it, and it is something going on with our current political climate right now. It's around Roe versus Wade, and so one of the things that we've done most immediately with that is that we've said, hey, no matter where you are in the world, should you need care from a standpoint of needing to take advantage of the resources that we have, we're going to help you get there. We're going to make sure you have the benefits to support you. You need transportation. We're going to make sure that you have transportation and lodging. So that's one of the things that I'm really excited about. I'm very proud of the fact that we did do that. Our CEO actually came out and said, hey, here's what we're going to do. And as a male being an ally, that really stuck with me. I got a lot of emails about the fact that he did do that and the company took a stance on that. That's one thing. The second thing that we've done from a flexibility standpoint and talking about being in a COVID cohort is we've launched a policy called Work From Anywhere. And primarily Guidewire was a office-based environment before the 1 and 2 punch came from COVID and we had to quickly shift. And so we've instituted in this new amazing policy that allows people to work from anywhere within Guidewire footprint if it's going to be for a longer span amount of time. If not, if it's just 30 days, they can do a 30-day run. If they want to go, let's just say I wanted to go live in Kuala Lumpur, I could. If I wanted to go live in Dublin, I could do that because it's not that big of a time zone shift for me. So those are two things that I really love that we've done. And then the last thing that I'm going to say in regards to stress and managing your time is that we instituted a unlimited PTO policy for our employees stateside in the United States. We have very generous policies on the international side, and we wanted to be equitable with all parties on both sides. And so we implemented unlimited PTO. So now that alleviates the stress of feeling like you shouldn't take the time or not wanting to take the time because you're completely burned out. And that has worked really well for our employees.
Absolutely. I think those are really good examples for meeting folks where they are understanding that external stressors are huge and that access to time and the gift of time, something you cannot get back as well, is really important. Adjusting policies to do so too is also something that is critical that folks lean into. Brandi, in your work, is there any kind of buzzwords or phrases you are just tired of hearing in the diversity, equity, and belonging space?
Things that I'm tired of hearing. I'm sick and tired of hearing the what's it they say? Inclusion is the dance, diversity is the dance.
Oh yeah, I know you're talking.
I'm tired of that. I always say inclusion is the after party. That's the after party. That's the club. That's the thing
I
that
love that.
outside of that, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't even use that example.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
I love it. Inclusion is the after party. It's the dance.
Yeah. It's the stuff that happens outside of the room when the work cameras go off. That's what inclusion is.
Exactly, exactly. If you had a magic wand, what would make your day easier?
What would make my day easier if I had a magic wand? I would be able to visit a lot of our global offices. I would have that in constant rotation without fear of the unknown of COVID.
Yeah.
That would be one of the things that I would say. I want to go to all of them. And I want to be able to spend time at all of them, not just to pop in and pop out. Brandi Riggins does the Kenya Moore twirl and leaves, like to stay and understand the culture, because I'm working with offices that I've never had exposure to from a global standpoint, like Poland and Madrid and
Yeah.
Milan. So I would love to be able to see and experience the cultures with those employees and understand the nuances that they face, because DEI means something different in every country. I know you're very well aware of that. And so it will also help me from a strategy perspective to make sure that we're touching everyone in an equitable fashion.
Absolutely. I would also love that superpower as well, too. Brandi, is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to share with folks who are listening, or underscore any key takeaways you hope people bring with them?
I would just say to be your full authentic self, put your personality in the room. I oftentimes used to sort of hide who I was behind the camera. I had an ideal of what I felt like people wanted me to be. And the more that I infuse my own personality into myself, into the interview process, and even into the conversation, the more comfortable I am, and the more I feel true to myself and true to my heart. And so I learned that later on in life. Like, I would have never 5 years ago done this with my hair like this. I just wouldn't have. And that's just the real thing. I wouldn't have done that. I would have never done it with big hoop glossy earrings, but this is who
Love
I
that.
am. I'm not going to hide that. And I would just tell everyone else not to do that as well.
I love that. Put your personality in the room. I think that's a great call to action. Brandi, thank you so much for taking the time and being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.